everybody, and welcome back. I'm here with Mandy Rae from Ecstatic Astrology, and we're both astrologers with the Ask Collective, or ICVS Kairos Ask Collective of Astrologers. We're looking at this week, the 14th to the 21st of May. Mimi's joining. And if you enjoy this content, please do remember to like, subscribe and comment. We really enjoy it when you do. And we'd be happy to help with any of your questions regarding anything that we discussed today or any of your experiences of this week. Oh, this is a month, 14th to the 21st we're looking at. So we've got the Sun meeting Uranus on the 17th and Mercury square Mars, Sun entering Gemini. So that's interesting. I mean, it's an interesting month this month, actually, because there's not that many aspects in astrology going on. So I haven't had a difficult time choosing the three to look at. Usually I've got a difficult time. I've got to pick the three most interesting or most significant aspects. But this month, it's just, there is only three. Yes. So it seems a bit redundant making this second slide of, okay, this is what we're looking at, because it's like, well, those are the three anyway. But here they are, and here's the timings, and the timings are in universal time, so you would need to adjust them for your time zone. And if they are like early morning, some of them, it might be the day before for you, so the dates may be different as well. So we've got on the 17th at 23:32 in universal time, the Sun conjunct Uranus. And this is really interesting. Mandy Rae just looked up before we started this degree that this is happening at. Mandy, do you want to tell us about that?
Yeah, it was the retrograde degree. So Uranus station retrograde last year at 27 degrees, 15 minutes. So this is technically new territory and just barely for Uranus that the Sun conjoins Uranus. So I thought that was really, really interesting.
Yeah, it really is. So it's nice to finally be off that 26, especially for those of us with planets or angles at 26 of Taurus, and to see Uranus move on past that. But yeah, to see it enter that just by that 2 minutes. But yeah, it's always significant where something happens at that retrograde point. It's a sensitive point. So it's kind of like two reasons why this 27-17 is significant. So that's going to be an interesting day. Then on the 18th at 4:35 a.m., that is in universal time. So again, it might be the 17th where you are. Mercury will square Mars. So that's a square from Taurus to Leo. So again, we're looking at the fixed signs, and we've got Taurus again. So the fixed signs are up again this week. I mean, it's always interesting when Mercury squares Mars. Mars, the planet of action, the warrior planet, and Mercury, the planet of our thoughts and feelings and how we process information, how we speak, and what information we're bringing through to other people. Then on the 20th, the Sun will ingress into Gemini. And again, we were just talking about how quick the year's going, because the ingress for the Sun will be there. Gemini season starts. And of course, that's Mercury ruled as the Sun enters there and will meet with Jupiter. But also the next ingress after that will ingress into Cancer, and that will be the summer solstice. And we see that seems to just go so quick. What do you think of this week, Mandy?
I think it seems pretty, I want to say new. Everything feels new. Especially after the week before that, which we called the word shedding is the word we chose. And this one just feels like we're entering new territory in many ways, even including the Sun entering Gemini. It's been a year since it's done that. So Mercury squaring Mars, even, it's like we're going to do something different this week, I think.
Yeah. Okay, let's dive into the charts.
There we are, the Uranus-Sun conjunction at 27 degrees, 17 minutes of Taurus. Feels like I need to be like one of those wrestling announcers when I talk about this transit. Yes. I don't know why. Like, let's get ready to rumble. That's what it feels like. And that's because Uranus is the planet that, I like the word incite. It incites change and can surprise you. It is a planet of surprises. It is revolution. It's freedom, innovation, unexpected events. So when the Sun conjoins it, which it does once a year, depending on, I think, Uranus's orbit. Sometimes those things can get funny, but it is pretty often that it does it compared to some of these other transits that we're having. For instance, Neptune's orbit is so long that it hasn't been, for instance, in Aries in 166 years. So what we're at now is the Sun conjoining Uranus in Taurus. Well, Uranus is 84 years. that it takes to go around the zodiac. And the sun, yes, it does hit it once a year, but this is new territory. Uranus has not been at this degree since 1942. And right around that time, I should say, the eclipses were in Pisces and Virgo. There was a massive war that was happening. And even Jupiter, I think, was in Gemini. I was looking at this stuff and I was like, wow, that's pretty crazy, because when you think about what that meant around that time, yes, Jupiter was in Gemini. At that time, the North Node was in Virgo. I had to go look at the chart. And it was the Saturn-Uranus conjunction. Now what we're dealing with is Saturn-Uranus sextile. That's a little more flowing. But this Sun-Uranus conjunction, I looked up the Sabian symbol, and it is, I'm just going to condense it down to the word that, the keynote word, and that is re-beginnings, which I found to be an interesting word. Re-beginnings, not new, re-beginnings. And I think that makes sense, considering we're on the heels of all of these retrogrades. It's almost as if we've had to redo some things. Uranus has shaken up our lives enough to maybe need to restart some things, in a new, fresh light. The sun is our luminary. It's what powers our galaxy, our solar system. So maybe galaxy was the wrong word, but yes. And it being the powerhouse that it is, when it meets up with the planet that is freedom, revolution, innovation, it is natural that we would have new beginnings around the Sun-Uranus conjunction. So it makes me wonder if this is the last time we're going to have it in Taurus, but it may be. Let me look at this, because if so, and even if not, honestly, something to pay attention to, especially on a collective level. Yeah, this is the last Sun-Uranus conjunction in Taurus. So it's a big deal. What's so funny about Uranus is, even though it's an outer planet and you would maybe ascribe collective to it, there's something about it being very, very close to a human lifespan. Its orbit is 84 years. So you can really follow your own Uranus transits very closely in your life and just see how things are going to go, what's changing up this year, and it's been, anyone that is a fixed sign has really been experiencing this to a degree that I think you will know. Now, maybe some of the other signs are experiencing it by square or by trine or by sextile, but the fixed signs have really had it in tension with their personal sign. And Uranus in that way changes things. It feels very out of your control sometimes. But if you work with it, I always say grab a surfboard with Uranus, because if you've ever been to the ocean, you stand on the shore and the waves are, maybe hitting at your feet, and you try to plant your feet, you get knocked over by a wave. But if you work with the waves, especially the unexpected ones that, you may have a time of your life. So grab a surfboard around this time, because I think, especially in Taurus, which is linked to the earth, it's linked to our supply chain. Like, if we think about it that way, Taurus is kind of a money sign, and it is a sign that really values security and stability. Uranus is not stable. And I may be spending a lot of time on this transit, but I'm looking at this as rather, don't want to use the wrong word, I don't want to say shocking or explosive, but it does have some quality of an unexpected thing happening. I don't necessarily think bad, especially with the nice trine to the moon in Capricorn. I think this is actually a time you can harness anything that's unexpected to your benefit. It's ruled by Venus. Venus is out of shadow at this point. Thank goodness. I think it's the 16th that it leaves its shadow. So we're 2 days past Venus leaving shadow. Mercury's in Taurus. Jupiter is in new territory. Mars is out of its shadow. And so it's like all of a sudden we have this fresh new soil to work with. And that's kind of what this feels like. Re-beginnings. I love it. You can harness it. And, there are a lot of things you could say about hard times in our reality. World War II would have been one of them. A whole generation went through that. You could even say September 11th. You could say lots of these times that have been, if you look at it and it's hard and it's unexpected and it's shocking. That's another word I use for Uranus. However, there are people who have harnessed those moments for their benefit. And it may be uncouth to talk about, but it is something that you have to think about. You know, if things are changing in reality, there's money to be made. There are businesses to start. There are people to meet. And there's a lot of fresh, new things to work with around this time. So if there is anything that surprises you or shocks you or feels like you didn't expect it and it's a little shaky, around this time, I think it's a good idea to think of how you can harness it to your benefit, especially being Venus ruled and Venus and Mars being in both fire signs. It just feels like think outside the box, and that's your best bet.
Really love that. That's a lovely way to look at it. I'll just add those questions, but they're along the same lines as what you've said. It's about Uranus offering the wisdom of individuation and asking how important it is to be true to yourself. And would you be willing to pay a price for that? What would you be willing to risk for it? To have that heightened sense of freedom and opportunity, and what that can sometimes cost. So yeah, what would you be willing to sacrifice for that?
And sometimes we're asked to sacrifice on a collective level, and it's not even your decision to sacrifice, or, you know, it's like, you know, people who start businesses during wartime because, you know, maybe something is, or like right now in America with the tariffs, you know, and you have people who are already shifting their world to maybe work with it. And that's at great cost to our country and to the rest of the world right now. But if it's already happening, you know, sometimes you have to go, well, this is happening and it's time for me to shift. I have to shift and think of things differently. So I agree. And sometimes it is you making the decision to risk something. And risk is a great word for Uranus. And in Taurus, that's so uncomfortable. You don't want to risk in Taurus, right? Taurus is your money, your safety, your security, your comfort. But Taurus is a sign that loves comfort. It's a fixed earth sign. I always think of someone wrapping up in a blanket on a couch with Taurus, you know, because that's how I want to feel comfy. And Uranus, it's not been comfortable. And I think I almost look forward to Uranus and Gemini because of that, because it's like, it's more appropriately attenuated to Gemini. Uranus is change and Gemini is used to changing. Taurus is not. And I think there's some conjecture because Uranus is more of a modern planet about Uranus being in fall or detriment or something like that in Taurus, which I found interesting. I think that what they surmise is that Uranus exalts in Scorpio or something like that. And I could see that. I mean, as a concept, that makes sense to me. It does not feel comfortable in Taurus. And whether or not this date is uncomfortable for you or not, it is certainly a time when you can harness it to change things in your life.
Yeah, when you mentioned like the Second World War, it made me think of like all the women who started working and then how they struggled when the men came back. They didn't want to go back to being housewives. They'd earned that taste of life at work and the benefits of it. And yeah, they couldn't put that genie back in the box.
Yeah, big surprise.
Yeah.
And that's coming up again. If you've been on the brain rotting Twitter, yeah, it's the trad wife thing. It is. Yeah. It's coming up again.
Yeah. Like so funny with that timing of Uranus being at the same place. And there's that movement back and that nostalgia for that way of life. And it's like, yeah, but that was busted 84 years ago. Okay, so Mars square Mercury. So this is on the 18th of May and it's at 5:35 British summertime, which is 4:35 in universal time. So could well be on the 17th, depending on your location once you've adjusted it. And it's at 13 degrees, 53 minutes. Mars there in Leo, so it's approaching the middle decan, Jupiter's decan. Square Mercury in the moon's decan of Taurus. So this is like a sharp, passionate mind, mental energy. Mercury being our mental processes, how we think and process energy, and Mars bringing this action, this fast, dynamic action, or this warrior kind of energy, and a talent for clear and decisive communication. It really wants to, right, let's get on with it. What are we doing here? Sometimes like a pointed humor, if you think of some of the kind of sarcastic or kind of programs that you think of, like The Office or something like that. There's like a archetype where it's a bit more challenging really to see. It could also be heated words and maybe protest songs or lyrics as a form of attack, like fighting through your talk, or passionate speeches that that change how we see the world. And also stock car racing or something, like Mercury can be associated with vehicles and cars. So that's competition that comes in with both Mercury and Mars, a need to bring it into sports or something. So those are kind of archetypes we might see, or fast talking. I speak too fast, maybe sometimes. I sort of think, okay, slow it down a little bit. And sometimes in the slower places, like with Taurus, I think, okay, slow my speech down a little bit. And then Mars wants to go faster. I've got Mercury in a fire sign, so that might be why there's that need to get all the words tumbling out on top of each other. We still see Mercury at that tip of that Mars-Pluto T-square. Again, it's not exact anymore. It's all flowing forth. So although they've got that exact square, we've still got those echoes of Pluto, but Pluto's retrograding out of it. So it's what we say when we say flowing forth. It just means that the event has happened. And I always use the analogy of two people at a party. And when an aspect is applying, they're kind of moving together. They know a conversation's going to happen. And then when an aspect is exact, they're conversing. The conversation is happening. And then when it's flowing forth, they've spoken. They know what they've spoken about, and they're kind of mulling it through still, or whatever's going to come of that conversation. You know, did they swap numbers? Are they going to meet next week? You kind of know what that conversation has initiated or started. So that's kind of what's happening here. Mercury knows and Mars knows what that conversation with Pluto has initiated and what they're going to do about it. And maybe this square, a square calls you to action as well. It's dynamic. It's the nature of Mars. So it's kind of, how is Mercury going to communicate, and how is Mars going to act in that place where it's asking us, how are we going to show up authentically? And Mercury starting to enter close to onto the beams there. But how is that communication coming through in that slow, steady planning place of Taurus going to echo what they learned from the shadowy places of Pluto?
Yeah, and Mercury's chasing Mars. Mercury and Mars will meet up in Scorpio, and this is the third quarter square of Mercury to Mars. So it acts like the moon, the lunations. You have it almost like a new moon where Mercury and Mars come together, then the first square, the opposition, and then the next one. So this is the last square before it conjoins again. You know, you have Mercury will retrograde in Leo in August, and so there's this dance, and Mercury is chasing after Mars. It's kind of how I look at it, you know, like, hey, I got something to tell you. And I do feel like, you know, these moments, especially with it being the third quarter square, which is crisis in action, is how it's been referred to. The first quarter is crisis in consciousness. So it's almost like you have to realize it and then you act on it. And this is the action time. And so I think it could be a little bit explosive, especially with the sun still with Uranus, but definitely something, it feels physical to me. And maybe that's because, you know, it's the fixed signs. Maybe it's because Mercury is in Taurus, like physically having to do something around this time. And, you know, I think another thing is Saturn's at the anaretic degree of Pisces here. So there is some sense that no matter what we do, action has to be taken around this time.
Yeah, we see the moon's also at the anaretic degree.
Oh, yeah.
Capricorn. So it's trining the sun and also sextile to Saturn. So that's interesting as well. Throwing all those ingredients in the soup. But I mean, both of those aspects are very supportive.
True.
But like that stellium that's forming in Taurus is all getting activated by the moon, that would bring the information down to us as well. And both Mercury and the moon want to communicate with us, particularly.
Yeah.
Of all the planets. The moon's job is to go around. The moon will meet with all the planets in a month and gather up everything from all the planets and then translate it all back down to Earth through its lunation cycle. That's kind of Mercury's job too.
Yeah,
maybe
that's true.
Meets with the moon. But yeah, that trine is just a really nice aspect between the luminaries for that time. Like you say, even though it's physical, the square is challenging. There's like that softening there through the luminaries.
Yeah. And Venus and Mars are pretty well trined too. So that's pretty nice too. I think there is some support in it. And even Venus and Mars being in fire. And the moon being in Capricorn, it all just feels very material, very real world. Yeah, not like in the ether or the metaphysical world. This is taking action and having to deal with it on a real level. But yeah, we are supported.
Yeah, bring it through in an earthy way, like Saturn wants to build something, especially in Capricorn, something tangible. Taurus is more about planning what we might build, planning ahead of how we're going to maybe build something, worrying about it, but just enjoying the lush garden, like you say. Somebody once called Taurus naps and snacks, but like you say, like looking at the comfort, but part of the comfort is making sure the worries are dealt with.
That's right.
Yeah, nice. And again, that warning for everybody, like if there are difficult words exchanged on that day, or if you're on the receiving end of them, sort of be aware that that's what other people are experiencing as well. Even if it's not you yourself feeling that energy, it might be affecting other people depending on their chart placements, like those middle degrees of the fixed signs. So that's Taurus, Leo, Scorpio, and Aquarius that are feeling it, but also with that anaretic element of the mutable signs, and again the fixed, that seems important. Saturn getting ready for his move into Aries, which will be a big deal. Are we ready to move on?
I think so. Sun in Gemini.
Yeah.
I have one of my best friends is a Gemini sun, so getting close to her birthday. Sun in Gemini is so social. It's a very social transit. And the funniest part about this, though, is that Mercury will still be in Taurus. And I think that, not that Mercury in Taurus isn't social, but it definitely feels like it still needs a minute to get used to being in Gemini at this point. But it's also something that I'm looking at for understanding Uranus in Gemini. This ingress to me, even though Uranus is still pretty far away, I mean, as it goes, there's a moment here where I need to tune into what the 0 degree of Gemini is telling me. And I think, too, the fact that the sun will trine Pluto from Gemini, this Gemini season feels very empowering. Yes, Pluto is retrograde, but I think there are some major messages coming through during this Gemini season. And of course, it's right before, this is the sign before the solstice. So we're really finishing up spring. And I love that the mutable signs are just those transitional times. And it does feel very transitional when the sun moves into Gemini. Of course, it's the third quarter square of the moon. So the moon will be in Pisces at the time. And we just talked about a third quarter square because of Mercury and Mars. So it is, again, a moment to take action. What are you taking action on? Well, the new moon in Taurus, because that was the last new moon that we had. So new moon in Taurus, full moon in Scorpio, and at this ingress is the third quarter square. And it feels ripe. I like that word. Even this whole week feels very ripe for picking. Integrate the things that we've learned from, gosh, I mean, I still feel like Neptune in early Aries is we're still just reviewing what's been going on. And this may be a similar feeling that we're reviewing, but also taking steps forward during this Gemini season. As Mercury's combust at this time, yeah. Unhappy, a little confused. It's not exactly.
It's not combust till it gets to...
Is it 10 degrees?
Under the green.
Is it 8 degrees, you said?
8 degrees is combust.
So it's almost. Okay. So pretty soon after this, because as Mercury is moving pretty fast, I think that the ruler of Gemini will be contending with the sun's beams. So yeah, I guess especially then during this ingress, it's good to, put thought to something. What do you need to put thought to? I think that's a really good way to use this. I guess in regards to everything else, I just get the feeling that it's just a review, this moment. The rest of the week didn't feel like that. I mean, it felt pretty fresh, but this is like review in order to make moves. That's what it feels like.
Yeah, it's interesting to see it like moving towards the bending of the nodes as well. We see Jupiter's at the bending of the nodes. So again, that's what the ingress is carrying, that energy, and the sun will be moving towards that point, which again can be the crisis point, like the tip of the T-square. It's a kind of T-square energy, isn't it? But you can call it the bending. The nodes are like a theoretical point, but that's the crisis point of it.
And I always think of the bends that divers get when they come up too far. So when I think of the bendings, it feels a lot like that. It's pressure, and there is some pressure here. And even at this moment with the third quarter square of the moon, it's got some pressure involved, pressure to act. Saturn at 29 Pisces, pressure to act, pressure to move. But that's why I think it's important to do a little review. I mean, it's like Gemini wants you to use your brain. So maybe there's some things you have to parse out at this moment, but it's a good thing to do because before too long, Uranus will be at this very degree, doing this very same ingress in July, I want to say. And it'll be all brains on deck at that point. Do your little Gemini review right now, also before Mercury gets too close to the sun.
Of course, once Mercury gets to Gemini, it'll be in its chariot, so it'll be fine once it gets there. But during those last degrees of Taurus, it's going to be under the beams and then combust, which is going to be more challenging.
Yeah, and it meets up with Uranus, and it's just like...
And then that affects Jupiter there. The sun's fine because the sun's shining those rays.
Yeah.
It certainly affects Jupiter now, and Jupiter at that bending point and with its ruler in a more difficult place than it was, Jupiter's more likely to be challenging and not able to be as benefic as it has been up to now.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like Jupiter and Gemini has been a little frustrating. It's just over there hanging out like a mosquito buzzing around your head,
Yeah, it's had a very up and down time. I mean, it had so long with the retrogrades when it had that mutual reception, didn't it, when Mercury was in Sagittarius retrograding, and that was like an interesting time because they just spent so long opposite each other. But yeah, what else did I see? There's this sextile there from the Sun to Neptune.
Oh, right.
Yeah, that's interesting that all these planets, this ingress now is creating these aspects to these outers as well that are new for us to kind of see. Because
Very true.
Looking at Pisces for them.
And this will be the first Sun-Neptune connection that it's had with Neptune and Aries, because the Sun-Neptune conjunction was at 29 Pisces. So this will be the first connection the sun has with Neptune and Aries.
Yeah, and if we think of the sun, it illuminates and shines a light on things. So it's really going to be maybe highlighting what those Neptune and Aries themes actually are. If we haven't been sure, this could be a time when those are lit up for us. And that's particularly interesting in Gemini. That's all about the information. It's like all the multiple rabbit holes that a Gemini person would love and enjoy. It's like, and there's this and there's that and there's that. And which one do you want to go down? It's kind of like this overwhelming amount of information that's possible to come forward about Neptune in Aries. Could suddenly watch the news and see how many Neptune and Aries stories come out at this time. We'll be sharing them wildly in our group, I feel.
I agree.
This is Neptune and Aries, but also I thought is possibly as well a shift for Mars in Leo because of the sun's dignity changing.
That's right.
It's not necessarily dignified, I suppose, in Taurus or Gemini, but it's moving from that fixed sign, which is more natural to it because its home is a fixed sign, and it's moving into this mutable place of, okay, one day it's one thing, one day it's another, getting used to that transitioning energy. And the sun is like, no, I want to maintain and sustain, and I'm on a fixed schedule here.
Exactly.
It's being asked to be flexible and transition regularly, and it's like, I don't know what's happening. I don't like this. So that may affect how Mars is showing up in Leo as well.
Yeah, I would almost expect people to act crazy around this time. And I don't mean in a bad way, but like the Fool card kind of a thing. You've got a lot of trickery, a lot of perhaps people just wanting to express themselves with Mars and Leo. And so, if you're at any parties around this time, report back.
Yeah, do let us know, because I just feel like even though it was a square from Taurus, it was more, okay, I know what's happening. There's a steady schedule, there's a plan, we know what's going on, and then it goes into Gemini and all bets are off.
That's right.
So come as you are, and that's going to be different in an hour. It's like that fancy dress party and nobody's got the memo.
There you go. Especially with the moon in Pisces, there going to be a little confusion, but I do think there's a potential here, and I guess it's all very personal to your chart, but it's just a great idea to make lists, to do comparing and contrasting. If you're trying to make decisions around this time, making your columns and what is the good part about this and the bad part about this, and just trying to keep yourself centered if you can.
Yeah, because data is the thing, isn't it? And information is the thing for Gemini. The more the better, especially with Jupiter there.
That's right.
Okay. So I think that concludes our week. Did we come up with a word? I do this every time. I have words and then they go by the time I get to the end.
Maybe I like that the Sabian symbol, the re-beginnings one. Even that moment that we just talked about, I could see it being a restart almost.
Yeah, because it was fresh, wasn't it? A lot of the astrology that's coming up, it's new for us, isn't it? So yeah, re-beginning. What would an emoji for that be?
Oh, the little race car.
Yeah, it's fresh, zipping around.
Yeah, exactly.
That's so cool. Brilliant. Thank you so much, Mandy Rae from ecstaticastrology.com for joining me this week. And we're both ladies from Asterosphere Kairos, the Astrology Collective. And we will be back with you next week on looking at the 21st to the 28th of May. Thank you so much for joining us. And if you've enjoyed this, please remember to like, subscribe, comment, tell us how your week went, and do share a race car emoji if you've experienced this fresh new energy.